What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the RBI podcast. My name is Richie. I am your host. We have 1 month until the WBC, or the World Baseball Classic. We're going to get into that a little bit today, as well as a smaller move, or I'll explain a smaller move. We're going to talk about the Padres a little bit today, and then to end this episode, I am going to start doing my X Factor for every team. We're starting today with the NL East. I'm going to do every division for the next 6 weeks. Can't believe we're on episode 12. We've been doing this for 3 months. I appreciate everyone that has listened so far. And let's keep going. We're getting really close to baseball season. Football ends this Sunday. Basketball trade deadline, I think, is tomorrow. But Josh Hart's a Knick. If you're a Knicks fan, there we go, Josh Hart. But besides that, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, RBI Pod, as well as my YouTube channel. I will answer your comments unless I start getting a ton, which I don't presume happening in that soon. But for the time being, I will answer your comments. So if you comment, expect an answer within like a day from me. And yeah, so just so I can collaborate with you guys. I put up a mailbag a little late on my Instagram, so I'm not going to do that on this episode, but I'll put it up a little earlier next week. So hopefully I can get some questions. If not, we move. But, enough of me talking. Let's get right into the episode. I'm going to start today with some World Baseball Classic talk. We've seen news like Ronald Acuna Jr. is playing for Venezuela. Starlin Marte is not playing for the Dominican Republic. The official rosters get announced Thursday, I think at 5 p.m. Some notable commitments I've seen, like Francisco Lindor, I think is playing for Puerto Rico. Pete Alonso is playing for the United States. I just talked about Acuna. Nestor Cortez, I believe, is playing for the United States. Like the DR team, the Dominican Republic team, that is. It's like Vlad Jr., Christian Javier, Jeremy Pena, Julio Rodriguez. So there's a ton of talent going to this tournament. A big question that we've heard a lot about is like the timing of it. But the problem with the World Baseball Classic is that there is no perfect timing for this. And I guess right now is the least worst time, because after the season, no one's going to play because the season just ended. A long grind of a year. Body's worn down. No one's going to go into a tournament and play like a second playoff almost, especially for teams that have won the World Series or been to the playoffs and whatnot. Middle of the year, you can't really do that. They do it in hockey, but it's tougher in baseball because baseball's such a long season. You can't really afford to lose like a 2-week stretch where like guys aren't playing for your team, basically. And like March is probably the best time, I would say. There's always the risk of getting hurt, but guys can get hurt in spring training as well. Like, I'm a Mets fan. I think there's 12 Mets going or something like that. I don't want them getting hurt. But, it's their right to go. I also see both sides. I get why some organizations limit guys from going. Like, the Yankees aren't sending Severino. I am very surprised at the Braves for sending Acuna just because of his injury history. And, like, he's coming off a torn ACL. He looked, like, a little off last year. And I wouldn't be surprised if he came out limited this year because a torn ACL is tough. I'm very surprised that they're sending him. Kodai Senga for the Mets isn't pitching for Japan. Oh, I forgot about Mike Trout. He's going, the best player in baseball. There we go. So it's an interesting discourse that we hear about. Like the pride for your country, I think is great. I think it's cool to watch like that competitive baseball in March because, let's be honest, spring training is cool and all, but after the 5th inning of Game 1, we're already itching for the season to start. And World Baseball Classic gets us real baseball right away, and it's televised. So, unless you have YouTube TV, I saw the whole MLB Network thing ties to YouTube TV. I have news for you, and this isn't like me breaking anything. That sounds like a contract dispute, and they're trying to work something out, or MLB Network is going to a different streaming service. So I'm not, I don't know anything. I'm just saying, be on the lookout for that. If you have YouTube TV, they might be going to a different streaming service. That would be my assumption, just because it would be weird to not go to one, in my opinion, just because of the nature of the way people consume content and TV nowadays. But if you have cable, it's still on cable. I love the channel. There's so many good shows on. They're talking about, they have their top 100 list on right now. And they're going to be televising some games. I'm sure FS1 might have some games. Don't quote me on that, but it's just cool because it's like playoff baseball in March, basically. and we're getting it now this year. Like I said, I see both sides. I get like why Brian Snicker wouldn't want Ronald Acuna Jr. going. I get why the Angels wouldn't want Shohei Ohtani going. I get why the Yankees wouldn't want Aaron Judge going after a fat contract. I think the Mets aren't sending I don't think they're not sending Starling Marte, but I think they're like advising him not to go. The Yankees told Severino not to go, or like mutual. The Mariners told I think Luis Castillo not to go. So we've seen this happen before. The teams are still loaded. I like the lesser the lesser stacked like countries that get these like really good players. Like I'm pretty sure Jazz Chisholm's playing for the Great Britain, which is pretty cool. Matt Brash is playing for Canada. I think Lars Nootbaar is playing for Japan. Don't quote me on that. It's him or Tommy Edman or both. I'm not 100% sure, but that's pretty cool too. I saw Christian Yelich was like eligible to play for Team Japan. It's just it's playoff baseball in March, and I feel like as baseball fans that gets us like through the itch of spring training a little quicker, because spring training is very long and very tedious and very boring after a while, because we see like the starters play, then you see the top prospects that your team has, then you get into the latter things. It's like the super young guys, like the NRIs, the non-roster invitees, and that's when it starts to get boring. But like I said, like we get World Baseball Classic televised on MLB Network and probably a lot of other places. I think it's on all day, so if you're off from work or it's a weekend, you can watch it if you're a baseball fan. You have no it's such a good product. It's just it stinks that like there's not really that perfect time to do it. But in my opinion, if you're going to do it, March is probably the most best time, and they also go into warmer climates. Like they'll go to Florida, they go to Arizona, I believe. My friend's actually going to Miami to watch Puerto Rico and Dominican play, which I don't know what pool that is. So I'm not going to do some crazy predictions for this tournament. I'm not going to do some like analysis on the tournament. I'll follow it. I'll react to some games on this podcast. But like we're gearing up for the MLB season just like the teams, but just like the teams, we're going to talk about some World Baseball Classic or have the World Baseball Classic as teams. So be prepared for that in future episodes. I'm personally rooting for Team USA just because like I'm from the United States of America, but like you're not a baseball fan. I feel like if you're not looking at the Dominican Republic team, the Puerto Rican team, the Venezuelan team, the Japanese team this year because of like Ohtani and like I said Lars Nootbaar, and apparently Ohtani said he's not even the best player on that team, which I find that hard to believe. But anyway, you're not a baseball fan if you're not watching that and going, wow, that's a really good product, because those are like all-star teams. And like I said, I'm going to root for the United States, but I just want to see like competitive, fun, prideful baseball, and those other teams bring that. And that's going to be a blast to watch. And I hope that you pray everyone stays healthy, obviously. And I just hope that it's a really fun tournament. And it gears us up for what should be a very fun baseball season with all the rule changes and some big-time players moving on. I really hope that this like kickstarts the 2023 MLB season. Just to throw in some news before I talk about the Padres, Bo Bichette got a 3-year extension, but it's an arbitration deal basically, which means they buy out his arbitration, which be prepared to see more of this in the future. In the last CBA, they figured out some logistics and numbers to get these guys paid early, meaning like their arbitration numbers are higher based on performance. It used to be a little different, and you wouldn't get paid as much. That's why you're seeing like Pete Alonso and Vladimir Guerrero making record numbers for arbitration, because like the numbers are going to be different from now on. Excuse me. I like this, but like I said, be prepared for these extensions early, like the Braves have been doing, so you don't have to go to these arbitrators and these court rulings and all these things, because like Luis Arias had to go to one with the Marlins, and I'm thinking in my head, I know that they can't set the number, the Twins set the number, which I think is stupid. The Marlins should be able to resubmit. But imagine going into an arbitration hearing with a guy that you just traded for, and they're telling you every reason why you don't deserve your money. It's like, why'd you trade for me then? Like, I don't know exactly if the players are in the courtroom or the whatever room. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know, or if it's just the agency and the agents. and the arbitrator, and obviously the team. I don't know, but it's just a crazy scenario to me that I was thinking about when I saw that Araya's his case finished. I'm not sure if he won or lost it, but regardless, it's closed now. Like I said, we're going to start seeing like the Spencer Strider deal, the Michael Harris deal. Everyone flipped out about those deals, like, oh, they're here to stay. No, well, Spencer Strider is under a 6-year contract with arbitrative numbers. Arbitrated numbers, I guess would be the term. Meaning he has a 6-year contract. He doesn't know what his value is yet because he hasn't played those years. With the extension, he now gets a obvious and flat value. I think that's what the mistaken thing. Like Michael Harris, it's basically a 2-year contract because he was a rookie. He got an 8-year contract. You play the first 6 years of your rookie deal, then you hit free agency. So imagine in 6 years from now, he hits free agency, gets a 2-year extension from the Braves. That's basically what they did. They also avoided the headache of the arbitration and the problem they're having with Max Fried right now. I'm pretty sure Fried lost his case. And not a great thing going into free agency if you're the Braves and Max Fried. But these are the reasons they do these deals. So you don't have to deal with that. And almost like you don't want to tarnish your relationship with the player. We thought that happened with Aaron Judge last year because they came to an agreement on arbitration. They almost went to the hearing in the court because last year, because of lockouts and CBAs and all that garbage, they went into the season with the arbitration hearings. Some players didn't have contracts until May or June, and he was one of those players. They asked him afterwards, does this change anything for your extension? He said no. 12 months later, or whatever, 10 months later, and he's a New York Yankee for the rest of his career. So, not a big deal at the end of the day, but it can show you what can happen. Like I said, Bichette, good player. I think he's in my top 10 shortstops. That video will be coming out soon. I'm just trying to figure out how to exactly go about it. Do I want to just break down MLB Network's top 10s? Do I want to compare mine and them? Because I agreed with a lot of them. There were some players that I was very surprised were left off. But the Shredder, I don't know if the Shredder's a real person. But they usually get it right, and then sometimes I'm confused. But, an opinion's an opinion, even if it's the Shredder. It's just... Bo Bichette is a good player, and you don't want to deal with these kind of things with a player like him, because if you want to extend him past this, like a Vlad Jr., you have to keep that relationship good. You don't want to lose that with a player, because teams will want a guy like Bo Bichette. Teams will want a guy for Vlad Jr. for more value than the Blue Jays would probably give him, just based on the fact that he's on their team already. And like I keep saying, we're going to see this again. I don't know who the next player is going to be. Thought maybe it might be like Alonso or like a Vlad Jr. Like I keep saying, those two guys. But it doesn't look likely for both. I think they're both going to get closer to free agency than not. But something to look out for in the future. And congrats to Bo Bichette, 3-year contract. Don't even know the details of the contract. I just know that it bought out his arbitration. So last week I saw a lot of teams had their fan fest or fan fair. I'm not sure what the correct term is, but it's pretty cool. Fans go on the field, sign some autographs. There's players that fans get to ask them questions. I think that's pretty cool. The Giants had one. I saw the Padres had a massive one, and we saw a picture with Machado, Bogart, Soto, and Tatis, and it kind of reminds us how loaded this team is, and it feels a little weird because they probably should be division favorites this year with those 4 guys in your lineup. Tatis is only missing 20 games. Pictured in that was not even Jake Cronenworth, Ha-Seong Kim, Trent Grisham should bounce back. I think they signed Nelson Cruz. Their pitchers, Josh Hader. They have a loaded roster and should be heavy division favorites, but for some reason they won't be. And we saw Tatis say, "I'm cool with any position. I just want to win." I was saying all the right things, and you're supposed to say all the right things. I talked about this on my basketball podcast that I used to do with my friend Rob. With Kyrie Irving, before the season, we heard him say all the right things. It's easy to say it when you're on a clean slate and nothing's gone wrong yet. For the Padres, last year, Tatis wasn't there. And I don't want to say everything went right, but they had a good season. They went to the NLCS. He's there. He can say all he wants. He doesn't care about his position and all that stuff. Until the season starts, say things start to go a little south. A little bit. Not crazy. How is he going to react? I'm not saying he's going to react bad, but like I said, we've seen this in the past. Maybe not teams as loaded as this, but we've seen players turn and things go south fast. He's going to have to, specifically, he's going to have to really accept his role because, let's be honest, he doesn't really have that much leverage when it comes to like a team standpoint after the steroids, the motorcycle, just all these things that he's brought to his attention that are not baseball related. Case in point, the San Diego Padres are loaded. I'm probably going to pick them to win the division, but stay tuned for that in 6 weeks. It's just, they're a really loaded roster. It just felt a little, I don't want to say like the Brooklyn Nets when it was like, oh, who's beating Harden, Durant, and Kyrie, but the picture of the 4 stars really brought me to that. I'm just trusting the Padres to be better than that and to live up to expectations. I'm not saying win a World Series because winning a World Series is like not impossible to do, but one team does it. Just be a dominant team, be a consistent dominant team like you're supposed to be. Manny Machado might not be there after this year. Juan Soto might be on the clock because he's unknown if he's going to sign there. Who knows with Fernando Tatis Jr.? I saw Greg Amsinger saying on MLB Network, maybe him to the Mariners if things go south. That's a little out there, but that'd be cool. Let's be honest, that'd be really cool. It's just, for them to live up to expectations, they have to deal with failure better than they have in the past. We saw 2 years ago, Tatis and Machado fight in the dugout. We've seen, basically, that was it, basically. And they didn't make the playoffs 2 years ago, and they were like picked to dethrone the Dodgers, and that was the Giants year, I believe. It's such a good roster that needs to live up to expectations, or I feel like changes are going to happen and players are going to start leaving. But this is their year. Like, teams go all in. Like, I keep referencing other sports, but like in the NFL, Jalen Hurts, the Eagles, this is their all-in season because they have a ton of free agents. Not saying they can't be good next year, but this is the year that they put all their chips in the middle. The Padres are doing the same exact thing. C.J. Abrams, prospect gone. Mackenzie Gore, prospect gone. Robert Hassel, prospect gone. Like, all these star prospects are gone because they traded for Juan Soto and they traded for Josh Hader and they signed Xander Bogaerts. Like, they have these, like, so many studs. And this is the baseball way of going all in. We'll see if they get it done. I don't know if they do. I have to think about that one. But for now, they should be in the mix. They should win 100 games, like, no problem. Things are going to happen. Injuries are going to happen. But they even have depth on their roster, where, like I said, with guys like Cronenworth and Kim. And those guys are like, I don't want to call them all-stars, but pretty damn good players. So, San Diego Padres, get it done. Don't get in your own way, basically. That's what I'm saying about this team. Just stay out of your own way. Okay, to end this episode, I'm going to start my X Factors. I got the teams right there. There you go. Phillies, Marlins, Nationals, Braves, Mets. And just going to name one X Factor for every team, explain it a little bit, and just why they're X Factors and where they can go because of this player. There's going to be different reasons. Like, obviously, the Nationals and Marlins are going to be different than the Mets, Braves, and Phillies, just based off of their expectations and what their goals are for 2023. The X Factor, it could be taken a couple different ways. Like, I have a couple of veteran guys here, a couple of young guys here, a couple of almost perennial all-star guys here. And basically, my definition of X Factor is I'm never going to really put that superstar because obviously you need him to be successful. But it's the guy that's, if you're successful, can take you to a level you weren't expected to be at, or a level that you want to be at, and there were little to no expectations for this guy, or someone's replacing someone, hint, hint, or a young guy stepping into a different role, hint, hint. So we're going to see who these X Factors are, and we're going to start off with the Philadelphia Phillies, and it is Taijuan Walker. Taijuan Walker was a pitcher for the Mets. Sorry I couldn't find him in a Philly uniform. The reason why I have him as the X Factor because this team doesn't really have young players outside of Bryson Stott, but there's not a lot of pressure on him as a second baseman because they have Trey Turner, eventually Bryce Harper, Nick Castellanos, Kyle Schwarber, JT Realmuto, Rhys Hoskins, Alec Bohm. So their entire infield is veteran guys or at least third, fourth year guys like a guy like Bohm. And Stott's got no pressure. Taijuan Walker is kind of replacing that Zach Eflin role. And Zach Eflin was a massive reason in their playoff success last year. I think Ranger Suarez has kind of creeped into that, like, it's the obvious top three for them, which is, not Walker, Wheeler, Nola, and Ranger Suarez. Zach Eflin was that other guy, and he's gone now. Taijuan Walker kind of takes that spot. If he pitches well, this team can go far. I don't know what his expectation is for this team, where they have him slot in the rotation. But having a quality fourth starter, obviously it's not more important than having an ace, but it lengthens your team so much because you call like your ace days your win days. Like you win on Wheeler Day, you win on Nola Day. Then you get to 3, 4, 5. It's like, all right, hopefully you win one of those three, or if you're lucky, two of those three. Pick up Wheeler or Nola if they have a tough outing. If Walker could be stable as the fourth starter, it turns into more of a win day than a lose day. And he is so pivotal because this can either be a phenomenal move for the Phillies or an awful move for the Phillies. And it just all depends on if he can keep the ball down with his sinker and use his stuff well. Because if he starts giving up hard contact, the ball is going to fly out of Philly. Their infield defense is already spotty. You don't want hard contact all over the field where there's a chance where they can make mistakes. That being said, there's not a lot of pressure on him, but the reason why he's an X factor is because if he is really good, if he is what he was, like the all-star he was with the Mets, then the ceiling for the Phillies just goes that much higher. They can win 100 games if this guy pitches really well, and I don't deny that at all because, like I keep saying, Wheeler and Noah is one of the top two duos in baseball. Ranger Suarez is one of the better threes in baseball. They've done a great job of adding talent. Trey Turner, like that's a star player. Bryce Harper's going to be back. Like, there's so much talent on this team, so obviously those guys are expected to play well. Taijuan Walker is not in those expectations type of thing, but he's a player that can really get you over the top if you get something that you weren't expecting out of him. Next up, we got the Miami Marlins. For this one, it was tough to go. I was going to go J.J. Bleday, but with a team that doesn't have that many expectations, I didn't want to go with a young player because over the top for them is like not much. So I went with Jazz Chisholm Jr. It's a little boring, but my takeaway with his X factor is that he hasn't put together a full season yet as a superstar. And I feel like if he does, it can help the Marlins identify a lot about their team, and you can start building around him. He might be one of those guys that gets that contract if he can stay healthy and have a really good year. Like, I think he had 14 home runs in like 50 games last year, something insane like that. We talked about Chisholm a lot last week for video games, but as an actual baseball player, Jazz Chisholm is a really good baseball player who I said last week as well, on the brink of stardom. He just has to stay healthy, and that's very important in baseball and all sports, obviously. It's just the Marlins don't have a weird team, and I don't think they're going to make the playoffs, obviously. I don't think they're going to win many games, but if he plays like a superstar, you can start to figure out what you need to build around this guy, and that's my main reason why he's my X factor. Other than that, like, I wasn't gonna go with like a Joey Wendell. I could have went with like Avisail Garcia because he had an awful year last year, but he's known to be a pretty good player. Pitching wise, like they're known for their pitching, so no guy's really going to be an X factor because they've pitched well in the past and still not won games. Jazz Chisholm has yet to put together a full star season yet. I expect him to if he stays healthy, and that is probably my genuine reason why he's my X factor. For the Nationals, this is a big one because, like we talk about Jazz Chisholm, the direction of their team might fall solely on the shoulders of Josiah Gray. Josiah Gray was in the trade for Max Scherzer and Trey Turner from the Dodgers a couple years ago, as well as Keibert Ruiz. Gray has been good, not great, or decent, not good. Give up a lot of home runs, but he's got good stuff. They also got Mackenzie Gore in there, so they got some young pitching to deal with. The Corbin and Strasburg contracts continue to kill the Nationals, and it's a shame because they are probably the 2 worst contracts in baseball. My point with Gray here is you were traded for 2, one lock Hall of Famer in Max Scherzer and one not Hall of Famer, but all-star level player, chance to be Hall of Famer in Trey Turner. And you haven't showed why you were that big-time prospect yet, and the Nationals need to see that because it would also help them stomach the contracts of Strasburg and Corbin a lot more. I didn't put Gore here because I don't think he's ever pitched for the Nationals yet. I think he was hurt all last year. Josiah Gray has shown Nationals, coaches and front office members, what he's got, and he needs to take that big step so they can kind of see what he's going to be. We saw it with the Royals with Brady Singer. I don't know if they're not similar pitchers, but it's similar in the fact that they're a young guy on a bad team, and the team needs to see more out of them pitching. We need to see it eventually with Casey Mize when he comes back for the Tigers. But Josiah Gray, like I said, they're not going to make the playoffs. They're not going to be a good team. They might be the worst team in the National League. But his growth will be so huge for the Nationals, and if he doesn't, it looks kind of bad because you traded 2 really, really good players, elite players, for him. And obviously Keibert Ruiz, but because he's a pitcher, he's kind of more known in a weird way like that. I guess maybe because he was traded for a pitcher, but Josiah Gray, his expectations aren't high because the team's not going to be good, but he needs to show something or it's going to get weird fast, I would say, even though the Nationals still have him under control. But then they can't go out and sign a big-time arm, or they're banking on him being the ace. Is basically what I'm trying to say, and if not, then I don't know what they're going to do. Next up, we have the Atlanta Braves, who had a decent offseason, but they lost Dansby Swanson. They lost William Contreras, but they replaced him with Sean Murphy. And because of the Swanson loss, my X factor is Vaughn Grissom, who is now playing shortstop, who we keep hearing about working with Ron Washington. Vaughn Grissom, I don't think people are underestimating the loss of Dansby Swanson because he doesn't have the massive stats, the biggest home runs, the highest batting average, highest OPS, but he plays shortstop literally every day. He's missed 2 games in 3 years. He's a defensive wizard. He won Gold Glove. And Vaughn Grissom didn't play a lot of shortstop last year. Obviously, because Swanson was there. He played a lot of second when Albies went down. And that transition is tough. Playing shortstop is a lot different than playing second. We've heard, they lost Freddie Freeman. Yeah. They also traded for Matt Olson, who is a solidified all-star player. Vaughn Grissom is stepping into Dansby Swanson's spot. He's not a solidified all-star yet. Can he be? 100%. But he's not at that level yet, and I don't know if the Braves need to. I don't know if they need a shortstop. It might be Grissom, it might not be, but they're going to roll with him, which I think shortstop is such a core position. It's tough that they're doing this, but on their corners they have Riley and Olsen. Center they have Harris, who I expect to have a big year. Sean Murphy's really good, so they have talent around him. It's not the same as the Phillies, I would say, because it is such a prestigious position. Bryson Stott is moving off of a prestigious position because they got a star player. The Braves lost an in theory star player for Vaughn Grissom, and those are big shoes to fill, especially with shortstop. And Swanson was a leader, and we'll see if he can do it. The Braves should be fine regardless, but I think if he's really good, it could take them to that World Series level, and they're going to need it obviously for them to get back to where they were in 2021. For the Mets, a lot of Mets fans are probably yelling at the screen right now like a bunch of guys, but I don't think it's a consensus who the X factor is, but last year the Mets lacked power, and they can get it out of Francisco Alvarez. I don't know if Alvarez is starting the year with the team, but he'll be there eventually, and if he's that 35 homer bat, 40 homer bat, 30 homer bat next to Pete Alonso, you don't have to trade for a power player. You don't have to trade for that slugger because he's right there in front of you. The Mets catching offensively hasn't been good since 2019 Wilson Ramos, and he wasn't a power hitter. But Alvarez is the number 1 prospect for a reason. He was right up there with Rutschman, and he's right there with Corbin Carroll, and he's right up there with Gunnar Henderson. He's right there. And we hear about all these guys, even Alvarez. It is so important. I'm not saying the Mets will, like the Braves, will be good regardless of what Francisco Alvarez or Ron Grissom do. They are equipped to do that. But if they want to win the World Series, they need something out of him. I don't picture him being a high average guy, especially not right away, but he's going to hit for a lot of power if he's good. And wow, because add a power bat to a very concept-oriented lineup, guys like Canna, Marte, Nimmo, McNeil. Then you add, like, Vogelback's kind of a power guy, kind of. Alonso's your power bat. Alvarez would be a power bat next to Alonso, and then Lindor is the whole package. That lineup would be very scary and very deep if you add a guy that can have the power potential that Francisco Alvarez does have. And I think that's what Mets fans are banking on, which is kind of a lot of pressure. But Alvarez, he showed his power last year. He hit 1 home run at the end of the year, like when the games meant nothing going into the playoffs. We'll see what he could do, but for now, he is, I think, going to start the year in AAA. What hurts him right now is that he's a catcher, and catcher is such a defensive-oriented position. So I don't know what's going to happen there. They have like Narvaez, they have Nito, they have, I think, Michael Perez as well with the minors, but defensively he's behind those guys, but his power potential is miles ahead of any of those guys combined. So I think that's what's going to get him to the big leagues faster than people think. Unless he has a 6 spring training, then you have to start him in the big leagues like they did with Pete Alonso in 2019. But Francisco Alvarez is the X factor of the New York Mets. Okay, so that's all I got today. A little bit of a shorter episode, but I appreciate you guys listening. Follow me below on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. I'm finally getting it right. There we go. Getting close. YouTube, subscribe at RBI Podcast. You know where to find me. Going to hold off on those football videos I was going to do last week until after the Super Bowl. I know it sounds weird, but they're more of an off-season type of video. Don't have much to say about the Super Bowl. I was going to do maybe a prediction type preview video, but I don't really want to, so I'm not going to. But expect something about like the quarterbacks next week maybe, or 2 weeks from now. Like I said, expect maybe in the next coming days of the me comparing my rankings. I'm not going to compare a top 100 because I don't have a top 100. I have top 10s for every position. I'll make one for relief pitchers as well. So thank you guys for listening so much. I appreciate it so much, and we're getting closer. I think we're 50 days away. So 50 days until we get Major League Baseball every day until like October or November, and I can't wait for that right now. Let's just embrace what we got. Let's get excited. We're getting closer, and I will see you guys next week. Peace out.